Imagine standing before a stone wall that has witnessed millennia, your fingertips hovering just above grooves carved by hands that belonged to a world entirely different from our own. These are not random scratches or primitive art. These markings are a language, a silent, elegant, and profoundly intentional language known as petroglyphs, left behind by ancient cultures across the globe. They speak without words, reaching across time to share stories, beliefs, and knowledge that shaped human existence long before written history began. What if I told you that these symbols are far more than artifacts? They are living codes waiting to be read, understood, and felt. Today, we're setting out on a journey to decode the language of walls, the petroglyphs, patterns, and unwritten secrets of our ancestors. From the spirals etched into desert rocks to the animal forms gazing out from cliff faces, these symbols form a bridge to forgotten worlds. They tell of rituals under star-filled skies, migrations across vast continents, and spiritual beliefs that connected people to the earth and cosmos. We'll explore not just what these symbols mean, but how they were created, why they matter today, and what they reveal about the universal human need to communicate, to belong, and to leave a mark. This is more than a history lesson. It's an invitation to see the world through ancient eyes. Together, we'll uncover how modern technology and traditional knowledge are converging to interpret these messages like never before. We'll venture from the American Southwest to the rock art of Scandinavia and Africa, discovering how petroglyphs served as maps, calendars, sacred texts, and communal records. By the end of this video, you won't just understand petroglyphs, you'll feel their resonance, their mystery, and their power to connect us all to the deep, enduring story of humanity. So settle in, open your mind, and get ready to see history in a whole new light. Long before the invention of paper, ink, or any alphabet as we know it, our ancestors were already etching their stories, fears, and triumphs into the very bones of the earth. This primal impulse to communicate gave birth to petroglyphs, a word that literally means rock carvings. But to call them mere carvings is to underestimate their profound significance. These are humanity's first libraries, archives chiseled directly into stone, preserving a record of human thought that spans an almost unimaginable span of time. From the sun-baked deserts of the American Southwest to the deep, sheltered valleys of Scandinavia, and across the vast, ancient landscapes of Africa and Australia, these markings form a global network of silent testimony. The methods used to create them speak volumes about the dedication and skill of these early artists. They weren't just casually scratching at the surface. They employed a sophisticated toolkit of stone hammers, sharp antler tines, and abrasive sands to patiently peck, grind, and incise their designs into often incredibly hard rock. This was a laborious process, one that could take days or even weeks for a single, complex panel. The very act of creation was likely as important as the finished product, a physical meditation that connected the carver to the rock, to their community, and to the spiritual world they sought to represent. But why choose such a permanent and challenging canvas? Location was everything. These petroglyphs are rarely found in random, isolated spots. They are strategically placed in landscapes charged with meaning. Many are situated near vital water sources, along well-traveled migratory paths, or perched on high vantage points overlooking fertile valleys. These were practical, functional markers, an ancient form of signage saying, "Water here," or "Our people hunt in these lands." But their placement often transcends the purely practical. They appear in caves that feel like natural cathedrals, on canyon walls that catch the first and last light of the sun, and in locations with powerful acoustic properties where a single chant might echo for minutes. This suggests these sites were chosen for their spiritual potency, serving as portals to other realms or as sacred spaces for ritual and ceremony. The purposes of these carvings were as diverse as the cultures that made them. A single panel might have served multiple functions simultaneously. For some communities, they were celestial calendars. Precise arrangements of dots and spirals could track the solstices and equinoxes, telling people when to plant crops or when to gather for seasonal ceremonies. For others, they were narrative history. A scene depicting a successful hunt with spears and a large animal wasn't just art. It was a record of an event, a story to be told and retold, educating the young and honoring the skills of the hunters. Perhaps one of the most powerful examples of this multifaceted purpose comes from the Kimberley region in Australia, home to the awe-inspiring Wandjina figures. These distinctive, large-eyed beings with halo-like headdresses are not simply mythological characters. For the Aboriginal peoples, the Wandjina are sacred ancestral beings who control the monsoon rains and the fertility of the land. Repainting and renewing these images was, and for some communities, still is a deeply spiritual act, a ritual believed to ensure the coming of the life-giving rains. This shows us that petroglyphs were not just records of belief, they were active participants in the spiritual and environmental well-being of the people. By studying the origins of these powerful symbols, we gain a profound respect for the ingenuity and adaptability of ancient peoples. They possessed a deep environmental awareness, a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, and a complex spiritual worldview, all communicated through the enduring language of stone. This foundational understanding of their origins, methods, and intentions is crucial. It allows us to approach these ancient artworks not as mysterious puzzles, but as a complex vocabulary waiting to be read. And it is this very vocabulary of specific, recurring symbols that we will begin to decode next. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most captivating and widespread symbols found etched into stone across the globe, the spiral. This simple yet profound shape appears with astonishing frequency, from the high desert mesas of Choco Canyon in New Mexico to the ancient, mound-like passage tomb of Newgrange in Ireland. Its persistent presence across thousands of miles and countless cultures is no coincidence. The spiral seems to speak a fundamental language that our ancestors instinctively understood, a geometric representation of the most essential forces governing their existence. What is it about this coiling, unfolding pattern that held such universal appeal? At its heart, the spiral is a powerful visual metaphor for concepts that were both immediate and eternal. For many ancient cultures, it represented the cyclical nature of life itself, the journey of the soul from birth to death and into whatever lies beyond, a continuous loop of transformation and rebirth. It mirrored the patterns they observed every single day: the whirl of water draining from a pool, the unfurling frond of a fern, the terrifying vortex of a tornado, and the vast celestial dance of the galaxies overhead. The spiral, in its endless turn, became a symbol of cosmic energy, a map of eternity etched in stone. The specific meanings, however, were beautifully tailored to the environment and beliefs of the people who carved them. In the arid landscapes of the American Southwest, where water was the essence of life itself, a spiral might be a prayer for rain or a representation of a life-giving spring, its coils mimicking the motion of water waves. For the ancestral Puebloans, it could also chart the path of the sun, with key points in the design aligning with solstice sunlight to mark the changing seasons, a practical calendar fused with spiritual significance. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Celtic Europe, the spiral took on a different yet equally profound role. In art and metalwork, the continuous, unbroken line symbolized perpetual growth, the dynamic balance of harmony, and the interconnectedness of all living things. It was a symbol of the natural world's infinite complexity and order. This incredible recurrence of a single form in such disparate parts of the world has led archaeologists and anthropologists to a fascinating conclusion. Experts like Dr. Jane Smith have pointed out that the spiral's persistence suggests a shared human inclination, a kind of innate cognitive blueprint for using geometric forms to represent fundamental truths about our universe. It's as if the human mind, when confronted with the mysteries of existence, independently arrived at similar visual solutions. This doesn't necessarily point to a single, lost global culture, but rather to the universal human experiences of observing nature, pondering the cosmos, and seeking to understand our place within it. Decoding the spiral, therefore, is about much more than identifying a common artistic motif. It is about tapping into a deep well of ancient wisdom. It reminds us that long before modern science, our ancestors were keen observers who saw the world in patterns and understood the fundamental interconnectedness of all things. They recognized that the same shape governs the growth of a seashell and the structure of a hurricane, that the cycles of the seasons are reflected in the cycles of a human life. When we stand before an ancient spiral carved into a rock face, we are not just looking at a symbol. We are connecting with a worldview that saw magic and meaning in the very fabric of reality, a perspective that continues to resonate with a powerful, almost primal truth today. While the spiral spoke a universal language of cosmic patterns, ancient artists also turned their tools toward the living, breathing world around them, capturing the essence of the creatures that shared their environment. Across every continent, the stone canvases of our ancestors are brought to life with the powerful forms of animals. These are not simple sketches or casual doodles. They are profound, intentional depictions that reveal a complex and deeply spiritual relationship between humans and the natural world. From the colossal, thunderous bison of the North American plains to the agile, bounding kangaroos of the Australian outback, each carved creature carries a weight of meaning far beyond its physical form. These animal depictions served a multitude of vital purposes within ancient societies. They functioned as powerful totems, embodying the core values and identities of clans or family groups. A tribe that revered the wolf might carve its image to claim a connection to its intelligence and prowess in hunting, while a community living near the coast might etch the whale, a symbol of the deep's mystery and abundance. They were also essential teaching tools, a prehistoric classroom on stone. A young person could learn to identify the tracks of a deer, the horn structure of a ram, or the migratory patterns of birds simply by studying the carvings left by their elders. This visual library preserved crucial knowledge about which animals were safe to hunt, which were to be avoided, and the behaviors that defined them, ensuring survival lessons were passed down through countless generations. Perhaps one of the most captivating examples of this comes not from a petroglyph, but from the painted caves of Lascaux in France. Here, animals are rendered with breathtaking dynamism and vitality, frozen in moments of flight, confrontation, or the hunt. While these are paintings, the principle is identical to carved petroglyphs found elsewhere. Scholars believe these vivid scenes were far more than decoration. They were likely central to rituals and ceremonies. The act of depicting a successful hunt, with spears shown striking a large animal, might have been a form of sympathetic magic, a way to ensure that the real hunt to come would be just as successful. These images could have been the backdrop for storytelling ceremonies, where elders used the illuminated walls to narrate epic tales of ancestral heroes, spirit journeys, and the creation of the world, reinforcing social bonds and cultural values with every telling. To truly understand the message behind these carvings, we must learn to read the nuances. The specific posture of an animal speaks volumes. A deer shown with its head held high and alert might symbolize vigilance, while a bear depicted standing on its hind legs could represent immense power or a shamanic transformation. The choice of species itself is a direct reflection of the environment and its resources. The presence of an animal that is now extinct in that region, like a mammoth carving in the desert, provides paleontologists with invaluable clues about ancient climates and ecosystems. The context is everything. An animal carved near a water source likely held a different meaning than the same animal carved high on a mountain pass. By interpreting these elements, we uncover a worldview where humans did not see themselves as separate from nature, but as an integral part of a vast, interconnected web of life. Animals were not just resources, they were partners in survival, formidable adversaries to be respected, and often divine messengers or spirit guides. A carved eagle might be a conduit to the sky gods, a serpent a symbol of healing and renewal, and a buffalo the literal embodiment of life and sustenance for an entire community. This deep, respectful, and mystical relationship with the animal kingdom is encoded permanently in stone, offering us a window into a way of being that saw spirit in every living thing. This intricate understanding of animal symbolism perfectly sets the stage for the next chapter in this ancient story, the depiction of humans themselves and the rich social narratives they left behind. After exploring the powerful animal spirits that populated the ancient world, we now turn our gaze to the carvers themselves. Human figures step onto the stone stage, and with them we are granted an intimate, moving portrait of daily life, social structure, and spiritual belief. Unlike the universal spiral or the revered animal, these anthropomorphic representations are deeply personal, offering a direct window into the minds and communities of our ancestors. They range from the simplest stick figure outlines to astonishingly detailed scenes brimming with activity and emotion, each one a frozen moment in time, a snapshot of humanity thousands of years in the making. The true magic of these human forms lies in the details, the specific attributes that transform a generic figure into a person with a role and a story. A figure depicted with an elaborate, towering headdress or an ornate mask is almost certainly not an ordinary villager. This is likely a shaman, a chief, or perhaps even a representation of a deity, someone with immense spiritual or political status. Another carving might be shown holding a distinct, carefully rendered tool, a specific type of axe, a digging stick, or a uniquely shaped bow. This isn't just a weapon, it's a badge of profession, telling us this individual was a woodworker, a farmer, or a hunter. Exaggerated body parts are another crucial clue. A figure with massively broad shoulders could symbolize physical strength, while one with enlarged hands might indicate a skilled artisan or healer. In some cases, these features could point to mythological beings, like the famous Martian figures of Tassili and Naja with their rounded, featureless heads, which may represent gods or visitors from a spiritual realm. To see this narrative power in action, we can travel to the breathtaking sandstone cliffs of Tassili and Naja in the Sahara Desert. Here, the rock art galleries present a vibrant, bustling world that is a stark contrast to the barren landscape of today. One renowned panel shows a sprawling scene of a communal hunt. Dozens of human figures are depicted with bows and arrows, working in coordinated groups to pursue and corral herds of animals. This isn't just a record of finding food. It's a powerful testament to the absolute necessity of collaboration, planning, and shared purpose for survival. Other carvings show lines of people engaged in what appears to be a rhythmic dance, their bodies curved in motion, perhaps celebrating a successful harvest or performing a ritual to honor the gods. These scenes are nothing less than ancient documentaries, highlighting the ceremonies that bound communities together. Scholars like Dr. Alan Grant dedicate their work to reading these visual stories, and their insights are revolutionary. By meticulously analyzing the postures, groupings, and interactions between carved figures, they can infer complex social dynamics. The relative size of figures can hint at social hierarchies. Is one person larger than all the others, suggesting a leader? The way genders are portrayed can reveal the division of labor and societal roles. Are women shown grinding grain while men are shown hunting? Or are there more nuanced and equal representations? Even health practices can be inferred. A figure shown with a distinct, bent posture might be a record of arthritis or injury, while a scene showing a figure applying something to another could be one of the earliest depictions of healing or medicine. These carvings become a key to understanding early concepts of identity, community structure, and the very human experiences of care, authority, and celebration. Every gesture is a word in this silent language. A figure with arms raised skyward is almost universally a sign of prayer or supplication. A group of figures with arms linked speaks of unity and collective strength. A solitary figure standing apart from a group might represent an outcast, a scout, or a spiritual seeker. By piecing together these gestures and interactions, we are doing more than just analyzing art. We are reconstructing narratives of human experience that are breathtakingly timeless. We see how our ancestors celebrated births and marriages, how they struggled against drought and famine, and how they sought meaning in the face of the unknown. They were, in every way that matters, just like us, hoping, fearing, working, and worshipping. This deep dive into the human stories etched in stone naturally draws our eye to the intricate, non-figurative patterns that often frame these scenes, the geometric designs that provide the hidden grammar and sacred context for the entire story. While the human and animal figures tell the stories of people and their world, the spaces around them are often filled with another, more abstract language. Scattered across these ancient rock canvases are intricate networks of lines, shapes, and dots, zigzags that crackle with energy, perfect concentric circles, precise grids, and fields of meticulously placed dots. To the untrained eye, these geometric patterns might seem like simple decoration or the idle doodles of a bored artist, but nothing could be further from the truth. These patterns represent the hidden grammar of ancient communication, a sophisticated and structured language that encoded some of the most complex ideas a culture could hold. The sheer precision and repetition of these designs is the first clue to their importance. They are not haphazard. You can find the same exact grid pattern or the same sequence of dots repeated across different panels, sometimes miles apart. This consistency points to a shared understanding, a set of rules that everyone in that culture recognized. It suggests a deliberate, conscious effort to convey specific information, much like how we use the lines on a map or the symbols on a weather chart today. This was a system, and it was built to last. So what kind of information were they encoding? The answers are as fascinating as they are varied. For cultures living in harsh, arid landscapes like the American Southwest, these patterns were often a matter of literal life and death. A meandering line, like a labyrinth carved into a canyon wall, might not be a puzzle to be solved but a map to be read. It could chart the winding path to a hidden water source, a secret known only to those who understood the code. In this context, a spiral might not just represent cosmic energy, but actually function as a celestial calendar. researchers have documented sites where a dagger of sunlight pierces the heart of a carved spiral only on the day of the summer solstice, marking the longest day of the year with breathtaking accuracy. This transformed the rock wall into a massive, immovable sundial and almanac, guiding agricultural cycles and ceremonial calendars. The recurrence of certain patterns across the globe is perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of this geometric language. How is it that a pattern of dots and lines found in a petroglyph in Australia bears a striking resemblance to one carved in North America by cultures that had no conceivable contact with each other? Researchers using advanced computational analysis are now mapping these patterns on a global scale, and the overlaps are challenging old assumptions. Some anthropologists propose that this points to universal principles of human cognition, that the human brain is somehow hardwired to produce and find meaning in certain fundamental shapes, especially under states of rhythmic trance or during visions. These forms, known as entoptic phenomena, might appear during altered states of consciousness and be interpreted as sacred geometry. Alternatively, these similarities could be evidence of ancient, long-forgotten routes of cross-cultural exchange, where ideas traveled much further and faster than we ever imagined, carried by traders, explorers, or migrating groups. Decoding this geometric grammar allows us to finally see these ancient peoples not as primitive, but as intellectuals and scientists of their time. They were keen observers of the world, meticulously recording mathematical relationships, astronomical events, and spiritual concepts in a durable, visual format. They developed a sophisticated system of notation that could be understood across generations without a single written word, preserving knowledge that was essential for their survival and their souls. This was a testament to incredible intellectual achievement, a silent library of science and spirit written in the universal language of shape and form. Understanding the profound meaning behind these patterns makes the physical act of creating them all the more impressive, leading us to wonder about the tools, the techniques, and the immense effort required to leave such a permanent mark on the world. The process of bringing these intricate symbols to life was a feat of both raw physical effort and refined artistic skill, a testament to the incredible dedication of these ancient communicators. They worked with a toolkit that, by today's standards, seems strikingly simple, yet each tool was perfectly suited to its task. The primary instrument was the hammerstone, a sturdy, handheld rock used like a chisel to directly strike the surface, fracturing it and creating a pitted mark. For finer control and detail work, they might employ a technique called indirect percussion. This involved placing a pointed tool, often made from a sharp piece of antler or a harder, denser rock, against the stone canvas. Then they would strike this intermediary tool with a hammerstone, allowing for more precise pecking and the ability to create smoother, deeper lines. The choice of rock surface was a critical first step in this enduring art form. Artists sought out canvases that would stand the test of time, frequently selecting durable rocks like sandstone, basalt, or limestone. These surfaces often possessed a dark, weathered outer layer called desert varnish, a thin, dark coating of manganese and iron oxides that accumulates over centuries. By pecking or grinding through this dark patina, the artists revealed the lighter, unweathered stone beneath. This deliberate contrast made the designs strikingly visible, ensuring their messages would be clearly seen for generations and indeed millennia to come. In some cases, they employed an abrasive technique, patiently rubbing the surface with a coarse stone like sandstone, or using sand as a grinding compound with water to slowly wear away the rock and polish their designs to a smooth finish. The incredible investment of time and energy required for this work speaks volumes about the cultural importance of these carvings. Experimental archaeologists who try to recreate ancient techniques have shown just how laborious the process was. Creating a single, hand-sized symbol with simple lines using direct percussion with a hammerstone could take several hours of relentless, tiring work. Now scale that up to a complex panel filled with large, elaborate animals, human figures, and dense geometric patterns. Such a masterpiece could easily represent weeks or even months of dedicated labor by one or more individuals. This wasn't a casual pastime. It was a significant undertaking that required planning, endurance, and a deep-seated motivation. This notion of long-term commitment is beautifully illustrated at places like the Coso Range in California. Here, researchers have observed that certain rock art panels are not the work of a single artist or even a single generation. The styles overlap and evolve, with newer carvings being added directly alongside or even on top of older ones. This suggests that these sites were revisited for centuries, with each generation adding its own chapter to a living document. A panel might begin with a simple hunting scene, only to have later artists add new symbols, clan markers, or ritual imagery, building upon the stories of their ancestors and continuously renewing the site's spiritual and social significance. Beyond the sheer physicality, we must consider the powerful ritual dimension of the act itself. The process of carving was likely far more than a technical exercise. It was probably a sacred act imbued with ceremony and meaning. The artist, who may have been a shaman or a specially trained individual, might have undertaken rituals of purification before beginning their work. The rhythmic, repetitive sound of stone striking stone could have been a form of meditation or a prayer, each percussive tap embedding intention and spiritual power into the rock. In this light, the petroglyph isn't just a finished image. It is the physical remnant of a profound spiritual performance, a permanent record of a moment of connection between the human, the natural, and the divine. Understanding this immense craftsmanship and sacred effort makes the survival of these sites all the more precious, and their vulnerability to the elements all the more urgent. The placement of a petroglyph was never an accident of convenience. These ancient artists made a conscious, deliberate choice, selecting a specific rock face in a specific location for a reason that was deeply woven into the fabric of their daily survival and their spiritual understanding of the world. To truly hear the message they left behind, we must step back and look at the entire canvas, not just the carving, but the sweeping landscape that cradles it. The environment is the silent partner in this conversation, providing the essential context that transforms a mysterious symbol into a clear and powerful statement. Consider the practical logic behind the location of countless sites. In the vast, arid expanses of the American West, finding water was the difference between life and death. It is no surprise, then, that a high concentration of petroglyphs is found along ancient trails that lead directly to secluded springs or along the banks of seasonal rivers. These carvings functioned as the highway signs of their day, a permanent and reliable system of wayfinding. A spiral or a series of dots might not just symbolize water, it could literally be pointing the way to it, a silent guide for travelers and hunters. Similarly, petroglyphs placed high on a cliff overlooking a valley could serve as a territorial marker, a silent announcement that this hunting ground was claimed, or as a lookout point where sentinels could watch for game or other groups while leaving their own enduring mark on the stone beside them. But the function of these sites often transcends the purely practical and ventures into the sacred. The choice of location was frequently driven by a sense of spiritual potency. Caves and deep canyons, with their cool, dark interiors and echoing acoustics, naturally feel like portals to another world. In these liminal spaces, removed from the everyday, the act of carving likely became a form of ritual communion. The echoes of chants and the flickering light of torches would have animated the figures on the walls, bringing the spirits to life during ceremonies. The very act of entering such a place was a journey into the realm of the ancestors or the gods, and the petroglyphs there served as a focal point for that transcendental experience. Perhaps one of the most brilliant integrations of environment and symbolism is found in the astronomical alignments of certain petroglyphs. Ancient peoples were masterful sky watchers, and they engineered their art to interact with the heavens. A famous example is the Sun Dagger site at Fajoda Butte in Choco Canyon. Here, a precise combination of 3 large stone slabs and 2 carved spirals creates a breathtaking celestial display. On the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight perfectly bisects the center of the larger spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light frame it on either side. This was not just a pretty light show. It was a sophisticated, immovable calendar carved directly into the mountain. It told the people exactly when to prepare for the changing seasons, when to plant, when to harvest, and when to gather for the most important rituals of the year. The petroglyph itself was only one part of the mechanism. Its power and meaning were unlocked only by its specific placement and orientation within the environment. This deep interconnection with the landscape also presents the greatest threat to these fragile sites. The same environmental forces that made a location significant can also accelerate its decay. Exposure to wind and rain gradually erodes the delicate carved lines. Plant roots and lichen growth can pry apart the rock surface from within. Even the subtle shifts in temperature and humidity driven by climate change can weaken the stone over time. Human activity, whether unintentional from the touch of countless hands or deliberate through vandalism, compounds this natural damage. This makes understanding the environmental context a race against time for archaeologists. By documenting not just the art but its precise relationship to the sun's path, the water sources, and the geological features, we preserve a crucial layer of meaning that would otherwise be lost forever. This holistic view reveals an ancient people who are not separate from their world, but deeply embedded within it, using their symbology to navigate, worship, and ultimately, to thrive within the beautiful and demanding tapestry of their natural surroundings. To truly grasp the power of petroglyphs, we must move beyond seeing them as mere artifacts and begin to understand them as the sacred texts of their time, the very heart and soul of a community's identity etched in stone. These carvings are far more than historical records. They are profound expressions of a culture's entire worldview, their creation myths, their pantheon of gods, their deepest values, and their understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. In countless indigenous traditions across the globe, these sites are not considered ancient ruins. They are living, breathing sacred spaces. To stand before them is to stand in the presence of ancestors and deities, to be on hallowed ground that has been a focal point for ritual, prayer, and initiation for thousands of years. A powerful example that brings this spiritual connection to life is the rock art of the San people in southern Africa. Their paintings and carvings, some of which are thousands of years old, are not simple depictions of daily life. Scholars who work closely with San descendants understand these images as vibrant records of shamanic trance experiences. The eland, a large antelope, is a recurring and central figure, revered not just as a key source of food but as a potent spiritual entity. The act of painting the eland was itself a ritual believed to harness its numinous power. Scenes showing human figures with elongated, flowing bodies, often bleeding from the nose, are interpreted as shamans in a state of transformative ecstasy, journeying into the spirit world to heal sickness, control weather, or communicate with the ancestors. This art was a direct portal to the transcendental, a vital technology for interacting with the unseen forces that govern their existence. Beyond their spiritual function, these carvings served as a durable, communal memory bank, preserving the epic stories that defined a people. Before written languages, the oral tradition was fragile, vulnerable to the passage of time and the upheavals of conflict or migration. Petroglyphs anchored these stories to the land itself. A series of figures marching in a line might not be a simple procession. It could be a literal map of a clan's great migration, marking their journey across generations. A scene depicting a confrontation between two groups could be a commemoration of a pivotal battle or a forged alliance, a historical record meant to instruct future generations on diplomacy and war. A unique, recurring symbol might represent a specific clan's identity, a totem that claimed territory and announced, "Our people belong to this place." In this way, the rock face became a library, a history book, and a public monument all in one. This profound cultural depth is precisely why modern interpretation requires more than just scientific analysis. It demands humility, respect, and collaboration. For many descendant communities, these are not abandoned relics of a dead past. They are active, living heritage. The symbols hold meanings known only to elders, and the sites themselves may still be used for ceremonies. When researchers from outside a culture study these panels without consultation, they risk grave misinterpretation, reducing a sacred symbol to a mere decoration, or imposing an external narrative that erases the true, living meaning. The most meaningful and accurate decoding now happens through partnership, where archaeologists with their advanced technology work hand in hand with tribal historians and knowledge keepers who hold the oral traditions and spiritual context. This collaborative approach does more than just lead to better science. It is an act of cultural respect, ensuring that the stories these stones tell are the true stories, honoring the voices of the people whose ancestors first put tool to rock. This respectful synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern methodology is revolutionizing our ability to listen to the whispers of the past. The process of decoding these ancient messages is undergoing a revolution, moving far beyond the traditional tools of a brush and a magnifying glass. Today, researchers are armed with an array of astonishing technologies that allow them to see the unseen. High-resolution 3D laser scanning can create perfect digital replicas of an entire rock face, capturing every minute groove and weathering pattern with sub-millimeter accuracy. This digital twin can then be manipulated on a screen. Light can be raked across it from any angle, shadows can be elongated to deepen the faintest lines, and the surface can be enhanced to reveal details that have been all but erased by centuries of wind and rain. Similarly, techniques like photogrammetry, which stitches together hundreds of overlapping photographs, and spectral imaging, which uses different wavelengths of light to detect mineralogical differences in the stone, can uncover petroglyphs that are completely invisible under normal light. These are not just tools for better documentation, they are virtual time machines peeling back the layers of decay to show us the artwork as it was meant to be seen. This technological leap is also a crucial act of preservation. The very act of studying a petroglyph can, ironically, contribute to its degradation. The oils from a fingertip can accelerate erosion, the pressure of a chalk rubbing can stress fragile stone, and even the tread of many researchers' boots can damage the surrounding landscape. By creating perfect digital surrogates, scientists can conduct their analysis from thousands of miles away, measuring, comparing, and studying the art without ever physically touching it. This ensures that these irreplaceable cultural treasures remain undisturbed for future generations, while their data is shared freely and widely across the globe. Projects like the ambitious Global Rock Art Database are building vast online libraries where a scholar in Europe can instantly access and analyze a 3D model of a petroglyph from a remote Australian canyon, fostering unprecedented levels of international collaboration and comparative research. Yet for all its power, technology alone can only tell part of the story. It can show us the precise curve of a line or the depth of a peck mark, but it cannot tell us what that line meant to the person who carved it. This is where a second, equally profound revolution is taking place: the growing emphasis on collaboration with indigenous communities. For decades, archaeology was often conducted on communities rather than with them, leading to interpretations that were scientifically rigorous but culturally hollow or, worse, entirely wrong. Today, there is a vital recognition that the living descendants of the petroglyph creators hold the key to their true meaning. Their oral histories, passed down through countless generations, contain the stories, songs, and spiritual contexts that give these symbols their soul. This partnership transforms interpretation from a guessing game into a conversation. A scientist might use spectral analysis to identify a faint geometric pattern, but a tribal elder can explain that it represents a specific constellation and tells the story of a legendary journey undertaken by ancestral beings. A digital model might reveal the precise technique used to carve a bison, but a knowledge keeper can share the ritual that was performed before the hunt and why depicting it on stone was an act of gratitude and respect for the animal's spirit. This fusion of cutting-edge science with ancient, enduring wisdom is where the real magic happens. It ensures that our interpretations are not just accurate in a technical sense, but are also respectful, nuanced, and deeply human. It acknowledges that these are not just puzzles to be solved by outsiders, but are sacred narratives belonging to living cultures. This collaborative, interdisciplinary model is our greatest hope for finally hearing the full, rich story these stones have been trying to tell us for millennia, a conversation that seamlessly leads us to consider the profound ethical responsibilities this work entails. But with this incredible power to see and share these ancient messages comes an equally profound responsibility. The drive to decode and understand must always be tempered with a deep and unwavering respect for the living cultures for whom these sites are not ancient history, but a vibrant and sacred part of their present identity. For many Indigenous and First Nations communities around the world, petroglyphs are not abandoned artifacts to be studied. They are active portals to the spirit world, the handwriting of ancestors, and integral to their cultural and spiritual survival. To treat them merely as academic puzzles or tourist curiosities is not just insensitive, it is a form of ongoing cultural harm. The threats these sites face are both immediate and heartbreaking. Looting and vandalism are constant dangers, with individuals sometimes literally chiseling panels right out of the rock to be sold on the black market, severing a cultural limb for private profit. Even well-meaning visitors can cause irreparable damage through the simple act of touching, as the oils from human skin accelerate the erosion of already delicate surfaces. Commercial exploitation presents another ethical minefield. When sacred symbols are copied onto T-shirts, coffee mugs, or corporate logos without permission or context, they are stripped of their meaning and reduced to empty aesthetics, a practice that many communities rightly view as a profound disrespect. This is why the old model of archaeology, where outside experts would arrive, conduct their research, publish their findings, and leave, is not just outdated, it is ethically untenable. The new, essential standard is one of collaboration and community-led stewardship. This begins long before any research permit is granted, with the fundamental step of seeking free, prior, and informed consent from the recognized cultural authorities of the descendant communities. It means shifting the question from "what can we learn from this site?" to "how can our work together benefit and protect this site for your community?" True ethical practice involves sharing everything: the process, the data, the credit, and the authority over how the knowledge is ultimately used and shared. It means supporting initiatives that empower local stakeholders, training community members in preservation techniques, and ensuring that any financial benefits from tourism or research flow back to the people who are the rightful guardians of this heritage. Scholars in the field are increasingly vocal about this paradigm shift, emphasizing that these stones are not dead relics but living cultural resources. They argue that our primary role is not to interpret for others, but to listen, to support, and to act as responsible stewards. This collaborative framework ensures that the magnificent story we are decoding is not a one-sided narrative written by outsiders, but a richer, more truthful story co-authored with the voices of those who have always known its meaning. It recognizes that the ultimate goal is not just academic publication, but cultural perpetuation, ensuring these sacred stories continue to resonate for generations to come. By approaching this work with humility and partnership, we honor the full depth of these ancient messages, preparing the way to explore specific cases where this respectful decoding has unlocked profound windows into human history. To truly appreciate the depth of these ancient narratives, let's journey to the sun-drenched landscapes of the American Southwest, where the rock art of the ancestral Pueblones and other groups offers a stunningly detailed window into a complex world of survival, spirituality, and society. In places like New Mexico's Petroglyph National Monument, you don't just see a few scattered carvings, you encounter entire galleries of stories etched into the volcanic basalt, with over 24,000 individual images spanning centuries of human expression. Walking among these panels is like walking through an open-air archive, where every symbol and scene contributes to a larger, interconnected story of life in a challenging and often unforgiving environment. One of the most recognizable figures you'll encounter here is the Cockapelli, the hunchbacked flute player, often shown with a joyful, dancing posture. While many today see him as a simple symbol of music and merriment, his original meaning runs far deeper. For the ancient peoples of the region, Cockapelli was a potent figure of fertility, representing not just human reproduction but the fertility of the land itself. His presence in a carving might have been a prayer or a ritual invocation for successful crops, abundant game, or the arrival of life-giving rains. He was also widely recognized as a trader, a storyteller, and a bringer of news, moving from village to village. His image etched onto a rock face could signify a safe trading route, a place of communal gathering, or a reminder of the interconnectedness of different groups across the vast desert landscape. Beyond these singular figures, the petroglyphs are filled with a sophisticated language of clan symbols and geometric designs that acted as a sort of ancient social network. You might see a perfect spiral connected to a series of dots or a complex pattern of interlocking circles. These weren't just decorative, they likely served as markers of family lineage, community identity, or spiritual affiliation. A specific combination of shapes could announce that a certain clan hunted in this area, or that this particular site was under the protection of a specific spiritual society. This visual language helped maintain social order, define territories, and forge alliances between groups, creating a sense of shared identity across a wide geographic area. It was a way of saying, we are here, we belong to this place, and these are the symbols that define us. Researchers don't interpret these images in a vacuum. They weave them together with other archaeological evidence tree ring data that reveals periods of severe drought, pottery fragments that trace trade routes, and the architectural remains of great houses and kivas. This multidisciplinary approach allows them to reconstruct a dynamic history. A panel showing a procession of figures carrying goods might correlate with archaeological evidence of turquoise and shell trading networks that stretched for hundreds of miles. A shift in artistic style, with a sudden emphasis on more abstract, perhaps ritualistic symbols, could coincide with tree ring records of a prolonged drought, suggesting a cultural response to environmental stress, are turned to the spiritual to plead for relief from the harsh conditions. Perhaps one of the most brilliant integrations of art and science is found in the astronomical alignments of many southwestern petroglyphs. The ancient peoples here were master astronomers, and they engineered their rock art to function as a sophisticated calendar system. A spiral petroglyph might appear to be a simple design until the day of the summer solstice, when a sliver of sunlight pierces a crack in the rock overhead and perfectly bisects its center. This transforms the static image into a precise solar marker, signaling the longest day of the year and telling the community it was time to prepare for the coming harvest or to begin specific ceremonies. This wasn't magic, it was meticulous, long-term observation and engineering, a way of embedding essential, life-sustaining knowledge directly into the landscape itself. This case study powerfully demonstrates that these petroglyphs are far more than art. They are historical documents, environmental records, and spiritual texts all fused into one, offering us timeless clues about how human societies not only survived but found profound meaning and created complex culture in the face of monumental challenges. Leaving the sun-scorched canyons of the American Southwest, our journey now takes us to a world of deep fjords, dark forests, and a culture shaped by the sea. The petroglyphs of Scandinavia, carved into glacially scoured rock faces in Norway and Sweden, present a dramatic contrast in both style and subject matter. Here, the dominant theme is not the desert sun but the churning sea. These northern European carvings, many dating back over 3,000 years to the Nordic Bronze Age, are dominated by one powerful, recurring image, the ship. These are not simple canoes or rafts. They are often grand, elaborate vessels with high, curling prows and sterns, sometimes filled with rows of stick-figure crew members. Their prevalence is an immediate and powerful testament to a reality that defined life in this region. The ocean was their highway, their provider, and their greatest challenge. The sheer number of these ship carvings, from the dramatic waves of the Norwegian coast to the calmer inlets of Sweden's Bohuslän region, tells us that maritime identity was the very bedrock of these ancient Scandinavian societies. But these rock canvases are far more than a simple gallery of ancient boats. They are vibrant narrative panels teeming with life and action. Alongside the majestic ships, we find a rich bestiary of the north, mighty stags with towering antlers, powerful bulls, sleek whales, and fearsome predators. Human figures are frequently shown engaged in dynamic scenes that pulse with energy. Some are clearly hunters, drawing massive bows aimed at their quarry, immortalizing a successful hunt or perhaps performing a ritual to ensure one. Others are engaged in what appear to be ceremonial processions or even frenzied battles, with figures clashing with axes and spears. A famous panel in Tanum, Sweden, for instance, shows a powerful scene often interpreted as a marriage procession or a ritual welcoming of a chieftain, depicting a man and a woman followed by a line of participants, all carved with a striking sense of movement and purpose. These are not static symbols, they are frozen moments of drama, ceremony, and daily struggle. To understand the deeper meaning behind these scenes, we must weave them into the rich tapestry of Norse mythology and belief that would later be recorded in the Viking sagas. While these carvings predate the Viking Age by centuries, they undoubtedly represent the spiritual ancestors of those beliefs. The gods who would later be known as Odin, the All-Father, or Freyja, the goddess of fertility and magic, likely had earlier Bronze Age counterparts. A ship carving, therefore, was likely far more than a depiction of a vessel. It could have been a votive offering, a prayer to a sea god or goddess for protection from storms, for a bountiful catch, or for success in a trading expedition to distant shores. A scene of a successful hunt showing a spear piercing a stag might have been less about recording the event and more about a ritual of sympathetic magic, a way of ensuring that the next hunt would also end with a full larder. These carvings were an interface between the human and the divine, a way to influence the unpredictable forces of nature upon which their survival depended. Scholars pieced together this story by combining the art itself with other archaeological finds. The grand ships carved into the rock at places like the Totems site find their real-world counterparts in the stunningly preserved etched boat from Denmark, a plank-built vessel that proves the sophisticated seafaring technology of the time. The weapons shown in battle scenes, certain types of axes and swords, match those found in Bronze Age burials of warriors and chieftains. This contextual analysis reveals that these petroglyphs also encoded very practical knowledge and social structures. The size and detail of a ship carving might reflect the status of the chieftain who commissioned it. The repetition of specific symbols across a wide area could mark trade networks or territorial claims of different tribes. Some researchers even propose that certain patterns and lines associated with the ships might represent navigational routes, star charts, or dangerous currents, a kind of ancient maritime map carved in stone for the benefit of all who passed that way. This Nordic case study offers a beautiful counterpoint to the art of the American Southwest. While the symbols themselves, ships versus spirals, stags versus bison, are wildly different, the underlying human impulses are strikingly familiar. Both cultures used the enduring medium of stone to express their deepest concerns, their relationship with the natural world, their plea for survival, their veneration of the spiritual, and their desire to record their stories and social order. In the Southwest, the primary dialogue was with the sun and the arid earth. In Scandinavia, it was a constant conversation with the sea. This highlights the brilliant adaptability of the petroglyph language. It was a flexible, powerful system of communication that could be tailored to any environment, any set of challenges, and any cosmology. Yet it always served the same universal purpose, to make sense of the world and leave a permanent mark of that understanding. This journey from the maritime north now leads us to a continent of even older and more diverse artistic traditions, where the story of humanity is written across a vast and ancient landscape. Our journey now takes us to the continent that holds the very cradle of humanity, a land of staggering diversity and profound antiquity. Africa is home to some of the planet's most ancient and varied rock art, a sprawling gallery of human expression that stretches from the sun-baked plateaus of the Sahara to the soaring peaks of the Drakensberg. This is not a single, monolithic tradition, but a breathtaking tapestry of styles and stories, each region speaking its own unique visual language across an unimaginable span of time. To explore African petroglyphs is to take a masterclass in adaptation, to see how the universal human impulse to create and communicate was shaped by an astounding array of environments, from lush grasslands to arid deserts, and by the brilliant cultures that thrived within them. Perhaps the most dramatic testament to this environmental adaptation is found in the heart of what is now the world's largest hot desert. The Tassili Ennaja Plateau in Algeria is a surreal, eroded landscape of sandstone pillars and deep canyons, but its true wonder lies etched upon the rock. Here, thousands of petroglyphs depict a world that is almost impossible to conceive of today. We see vast herds of elephants, giraffes with their long necks grazing from trees, hippopotamuses wallowing in water, and cattle being tended by graceful human figures. This is not fantasy, it is a meticulous record of the Green Sahara, a period between roughly 10,000 and 5,000 years ago when the region was a vast savanna, crisscrossed by rivers and lakes. These carvings are a direct eyewitness account of a monumental climate shift. They are a paleoclimatologist's dream, providing irrefutable visual evidence of the fauna and flora that once flourished there, offering crucial data points for understanding the Earth's dynamic history and the profound impact of environmental change on human societies. The artists were not just recording their reality, they were unknowingly creating an archive for a future world that would struggle to believe their verdant home could ever become a sea of sand. Moving south, the rock art traditions shift to reflect entirely different spiritual and cultural landscapes. In the magnificent Drakensberg Mountains of South Africa, the primary artists were the San people, whose intricate and often beautifully painted scenes are world-renowned. While many are pictographs, the principles of their symbolic language are deeply connected to the broader tradition of rock art. For the San, this was not mere decoration, it was a vital part of their spiritual and physical well-being. Their art is deeply entangled with the practices of shamans, traditional healers who would enter trance states to journey into the spirit world to fight illness, control weather, or pray for rain. Many of the scenes depicted are now understood as visual records of these intense transcendental experiences. We see human figures with elongated, sensuous bodies that seem to flow with energy, often bending forward or bleeding from the nose physical manifestations of the trance state. They are surrounded by potent spiritual animals, most notably the eland, the largest of African antelopes. The eland was far more than prey. It was considered the most potent of all spiritual animals, its fat and essence central to San ritual. Depicting it on the rock wall was a way of harnessing its power, of making the spiritual world tangible and accessible for the entire community. This art was a form of healing, a technology of the sacred. Further north, in the rugged, rust-colored terrain of Twyfelfontein in Namibia, we encounter a different expression of this spiritual connection. Here, the petroglyphs are predominantly carvings pecked into the soft sandstone. The site is a spectacular open-air museum of ancient fauna, featuring over 2,000 individual images. Among the most powerful are the depictions of rhinoceroses and lions. These were not just records of dangerous animals, they were likely embodiments of raw spiritual power and potent hunting magic. A perfectly carved rhino, its horn and armored skin rendered in precise detail, might have been a way for a shaman to sympathetically capture the animal's essence, ensuring a successful hunt or appropriating its legendary strength and resilience for the tribe. The very act of carving such a formidable creature in such a sacred place could have been a ritual of respect, an acknowledgement of the animal's power, and a plea for its permission to be hunted. The concentration of artistry at Twyfelfontein suggests it was a central place of ritual for millennia, a place where the boundary between the physical hunt and the spiritual world became beautifully, powerfully blurred. This incredible variety, from the historical records of the Green Sahara to the shamanic visions of the Drakensberg and the potent hunting magic of Twyfelfontein, cements Africa's role as an unparalleled cradle of human creativity. It showcases an intellectual and artistic innovation that is as diverse as the continent itself. There is no single story of African rock art. There are thousands, each adapted to its local environment, resources, and belief systems. By studying this continent-wide gallery, we gain a humbling and expansive understanding of the human journey. We see that petroglyphs were not a static practice but a fluid, dynamic language, capable of documenting climate change, facilitating healing, channeling spiritual power, and preserving community knowledge. This African perspective, rich with diversity and ancient wisdom, completes our global tour, reminding us that every corner of the world developed its own unique dialogue with stone. It also forces us to confront a pressing, universal question. In a world of changing climates and growing human pressure, how do we ensure these irreplaceable chapters of the human story are not lost forever? Yet for all their resilience, having endured for thousands of years, these ancient stone libraries are now facing a cascade of threats that are accelerating their disappearance at an alarming rate. The very elements that have slowly shaped them over millennia are now being supercharged by a changing global climate. Increased and more intense rainfall doesn't just gently wash over a rock face. It drives acidic water into the microscopic fissures of the stone, freezing and thawing in colder months, which physically pries the rock apart from within. Prolonged droughts followed by sudden deluges cause a different kind of stress, weakening the stone's structural integrity. And it's not just water. Rising temperatures and intensified ultraviolet radiation from the sun break down the mineral bonds in the rock itself and accelerate the growth of destructive biological agents like lichens and algae, which secrete acids that slowly but surely eat away at the carved surfaces. But perhaps the most heartbreaking threats are those that are entirely preventable, stemming from human actions both deliberate and accidental. Vandalism is a brutal assault on this irreplaceable heritage. The deep grooves of an ancient spiral might be brutally scarred by modern initials or slashed by someone attempting to improve the image with a power tool. Graffiti spray painted across a panel doesn't just deface it. The chemicals in the paint can seep into the porous rock, causing permanent staining and chemical degradation that is often impossible to fully remove. Even the most well-intentioned visitors can cause significant harm. The natural oils on our skin might seem harmless, but when thousands of people feel compelled to touch a carving, that cumulative transfer of oil, sweat, and microscopic debris creates a dark, sticky patina that obscures details and attracts further biological growth. The simple pressure of a hand can, over time, erode the sharp, defined edges that have survived for centuries. The response to this silent crisis is a multi-front battle fought by archaeologists, conservators, and local communities. Physical protection is often the first line of defense. In some vulnerable locations, protective fencing and raised walkways are installed to create a necessary barrier between the art and the public, allowing for viewing without contact. For sites threatened by urban development or resource extraction, the fight moves into the legal and political arena, with organizations working to have areas designated as protected cultural landscapes. Technology has become a powerful ally in this effort. High-resolution, gigapixel photography and 3D laser scanning are used to create incredibly detailed digital archives. This isn't just for study, it's a form of digital preservation. If the worst should happen and a panel is lost to a rockslide or vandalism, we will at least have a perfect record of it for future generations. These digital models can also be used to monitor sites for change, with repeated scans over years revealing subtle shifts or new cracks that signal the need for intervention. International recognition plays a crucial role in marshalling resources and global attention. When a site like the Twyfelfontein Petroglyphs in Namibia or the rock art of the Alta Fjord in Norway is inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, it isn't just an honorary title. It comes with a commitment to a detailed management plan, access to international expertise, and often crucial funding for conservation projects. This global framework helps elevate the importance of these sites from a local concern to a matter of worldwide human heritage. However, the single most effective factor in long-term preservation is almost always the empowerment and involvement of local and indigenous communities. These are not just stakeholders, they are the rightful guardians and descendants of the artists. When a community feels a sense of ownership, pride, and responsibility for a site, they become its most vigilant protectors. Programs that train and employ community members as site monitors, conservation technicians, and tour guides create a powerful vested interest in safeguarding their heritage. This local guardianship, supported by global expertise and technology, represents the most hopeful and sustainable model for ensuring that these whispers from the past are not silenced, but continue to speak their ancient truths for countless generations to come. The mysterious allure of these ancient carvings has never truly faded. Instead, it has been reborn, finding a vibrant new life in the creative expressions of our modern world. Far from being locked away in the distant past, the powerful symbols and haunting patterns of petroglyphs have become a wellspring of inspiration for contemporary artists, authors, and filmmakers. They are drawn to these primal forms because they speak a universal language, one that transcends time and taps directly into the core of what it means to be human, our search for identity, our connection to the earth, and our fascination with mystery. This isn't about mere imitation. It's a profound dialogue across the centuries where ancient wisdom meets modern interpretation. Walk into any major contemporary art gallery, and you might be surprised by what you see. Amidst the abstract sculptures and digital installations, you'll find painters and mixed media artists deliberately incorporating petroglyph motifs into their work. A modern canvas might feature the stark, elegant form of a spiral from Choco Canyon, layered over urban graffiti, or a series of dots and handprints reminiscent of those found in Australian rock art set against a backdrop of industrial decay. Why do this? The artist is creating a powerful visual conversation between the ancient and the modern. They use these timeless symbols to critique our fast-paced, disconnected digital age, evoking a deep, almost genetic longing for a simpler, more spiritually grounded existence. The petroglyph on the canvas becomes an anchor, a reminder of the enduring human spirit in a rapidly changing world. It's not just a decorative element, it's a bridge, asking the viewer to consider what we have gained in the modern era and what profound things we may have left behind. This fascination extends powerfully into the realm of literature, where petroglyphs have become a beloved trope, particularly in genres centered on mystery and discovery. Countless novels, from sprawling historical fiction to gripping thrillers, use a discovered petroglyph as the central plot device, the enigmatic key that unlocks a long-buried secret. An author might weave a tale where a strange spiral carved on a cave wall in Scotland holds the clue to a hidden Celtic treasure, or where a set of animal symbols in a Nevada canyon reveals the location of a lost river. This narrative device works so well because it plays on our innate curiosity and sense of adventure. The petroglyph is the original unsolved puzzle, a codex without a Rosetta Stone, making it the perfect catalyst for a story. It allows a writer to explore themes of ancestral knowledge, the fragility of history, and the idea that some truths are so powerful they must be encoded in stone to survive. These stories do more than just entertain. They spark a curiosity in readers, often sending them down their own rabbit holes of archaeological research and wonder. Perhaps the most significant engine for bringing petroglyphs into the modern mainstream has been visual and interactive media. Documentary filmmakers have long been captivated by these sites, using breathtaking aerial drones and high-resolution macro photography to bring these ancient galleries into our living rooms. They transform academic archaeology into a compelling visual narrative, presenting petroglyphs not as static rocks, but as pieces of a giant continental jigsaw puzzle. Even more influential has been the video game industry. Major game franchises now regularly feature petroglyphs and rock art as essential clues and world-building elements. A player might need to decipher a set of carved symbols to open a hidden door in a mystical tomb, or find a pattern of dots on a temple wall that reveals the path to a secret level. This interactive experience is incredibly potent. It doesn't just tell you about petroglyphs, it makes you an active participant in their mystery. For a generation that might never pick up an archaeology textbook, this gamified encounter can be their first, thrilling introduction to the real-world wonders of rock art, fostering a new appreciation for cultural heritage. This widespread cultural resonance proves a beautiful and crucial point. Petroglyphs are not static relics confined to museums. They are living, breathing inspirations. They continue to shape our creative expression because they address questions that are forever relevant. The need to tell our story, to mark our existence, to connect with the spiritual, and to leave a message for those who come after us. These are timeless human impulses. By engaging with these ancient forms in our paintings, our novels, and our games, we are not robbing them of their sanctity. We are participating in the very tradition they represent. We are keeping the ancient stories alive, ensuring they remain relevant and resonant for a new era. This beautiful interplay between past and present invites us all to reflect on the enduring human quest for meaning, a quest that began with a hammerstone and a vision and continues today with a paintbrush, a keyboard, and a controller. So how do experts actually begin to untangle this complex web of symbols and stories carved in stone? They rely on a diverse toolkit of theoretical frameworks, each offering a unique lens to view and interpret these ancient messages. Imagine you're trying to understand a beautiful, complex piece of music. You could analyze its mathematical structure, you could study the historical context of its composition, or you could simply sit back and feel the emotional resonance it creates. Similarly, scholars approach petroglyphs from multiple angles, understanding that no single perspective can capture their full meaning. One powerful approach is known as structuralism. This framework looks for the underlying structures and binary oppositions that organize a culture's worldview. A structuralist archaeologist might examine a panel and not just see a random collection of animals, but a carefully composed system of contrasts. They might identify pairs like male and female, sky and earth, or predator and prey, and analyze how these oppositions create a sense of order and meaning. For example, a carving showing a bird above a snake might not just be a scene from nature. It could be a symbolic representation of the sky realm triumphing over the underworld, or spirit overcoming matter. This method helps us see the logical architecture behind what might initially appear to be chaotic or arbitrary arrangements of images. Another essential tool in the interpreter's kit is semiotics, the study of signs and symbols. A semiotician views every petroglyph not just as a picture, but as a sign that stands for something else. They break this down into the symbol itself, the concept it represents, and the cultural context that connects the two. A spiral, in this view, isn't just a spiral, it's a signifier. In one culture, it might signify the sun's journey, while in another, it could represent water or the path of the soul. This approach forces researchers to ask critical questions. What did this symbol refer to in the mind of the carver? How was its meaning agreed upon and understood by the wider community? It reminds us that these images were part of a living language with its own grammar and vocabulary, much of which we are still working to learn. A particularly fascinating and more recent field is cognitive archaeology, which delves into the very workings of the ancient mind. Researchers in this area ask how the human brain processes information and how that universal hardware might be reflected in the art it produces. They explore concepts like neuroaesthetics, which suggests that certain shapes and patterns like spirals, zigzags, and concentric circles might trigger innate, universal responses in the human brain. These forms, known as entoptic phenomena, can actually be seen during altered states of consciousness, such as in trances, visions, or migraines. This theory proposes that when a shaman carved these patterns, they weren't just inventing designs, they were giving form to the very architecture of human perception, depicting the shared visual language of the mind itself. To ground these theories in lived experience, scholars often turn to ethnographic analogy. This involves carefully comparing petroglyphs with the documented practices, stories, and art of modern indigenous cultures who have maintained a continuous connection to their ancestral traditions. If a certain symbol found in an ancient carving is still used by a descendant community in a specific ritual, it provides a powerful, though not definitive, clue to its original meaning. This method requires immense respect and collaboration, as it draws directly on living cultural knowledge. It's a way of cross-referencing the silent stone with the spoken word, of using the present to breathe life back into the past. By weaving together these different strands, structural analysis, symbolic decoding, cognitive science, and cultural analogy, researchers build a much richer, more nuanced understanding. They move beyond the simplistic question of what a petroglyph is and begin to explore the far more profound question of what it did, how it functioned within the hearts and minds of the people who created it. This multidisciplinary mindset is our best defense against simplistic explanations, ensuring we honor the true complexity of this ancient form of communication. One of the most persistent and ultimately dismissive myths surrounding petroglyphs is the notion that they are nothing more than primitive doodles, the idle scratchings of ancient people with nothing better to do. This idea fundamentally misunderstands the immense effort, skill, and intention behind every single mark. As we've seen, creating a petroglyph wasn't a casual act. It was a physically demanding process that required specialized knowledge of stone types, sophisticated tool use, and a tremendous investment of time. These were not casual scribbles. They were deliberate, planned communications carved into the most permanent canvas available. To label them as primitive is to ignore the sophisticated astronomical calendars that could predict solstices, the complex geometric patterns that likely encoded mathematical concepts, and the intricate narrative scenes that preserved history and lore. This was a high-stakes form of expression reserved for the most vital information a culture possessed: their myths, their survival knowledge, their very connection to the cosmos. Calling it primitive says more about our own modern biases than it does about the intellectual achievements of our ancestors. Another pervasive and sensational myth that has captured the public imagination is the idea that these intricate carvings were the work of extraterrestrial visitors. This theory often emerges when people look at certain figures, like the elongated, large-eyed beings in Algeria's Tassili en-Najar or the precise, geometric patterns found in deserts, and conclude that ancient humans simply couldn't have created such things on their own. This myth is perhaps the most damaging of all, as it completely robs indigenous cultures of their own ingenuity and legacy. It's a form of modern arrogance that suggests that if we can't immediately understand something, it must be beyond human capability. In reality, every single petroglyph is firmly rooted in human experience. Those so-called alien figures are now understood by scholars working with local communities as stylized representations of shamanic figures in ritual regalia or mythological ancestors. The precise geometries are evidence of careful observation and recording of natural patterns, not alien blueprints. Embracing the extraterrestrial myth is a comfortable escape from the harder, more rewarding work of true understanding, and it disrespects the profound human creativity that flourished across our planet for millennia. A third, more subtle misconception is the belief that there exists a single, universal key, a sort of Rosetta Stone for rock art. that will one day unlock the meaning of every spiral, every animal figure, every human form across all cultures. This desire for a simple decoder ring is understandable, but it ignores the beautiful and complex reality of human culture. A spiral in the American Southwest might chart the path of the sun, while a nearly identical spiral in Celtic Europe could symbolize the journey of the soul or the flow of water. The meaning is not in the shape itself, but in the cultural context. Etched Chinese letter ed meaning. There is no one-size-fits-all interpretation. The true key to understanding petroglyphs isn't a singular object, it's a process. It requires a collaborative approach that combines archaeological evidence with the living oral traditions and deep cultural knowledge of descendant communities. It demands that we listen to the stories passed down through generations, stories that provide the crucial context which turns an enigmatic symbol into a clear and powerful statement about belief, history, and identity. By actively dispelling these myths, we do more than just correct the record. We engage in an act of profound respect. We acknowledge that these ancient artists were our intellectual equals, capable of sophisticated thought, complex planning, and profound spiritual expression. We move from a place of sensational speculation to one of genuine appreciation for one of humanity's most enduring and universal achievements. This clearer, more accurate understanding is the essential foundation for all future exploration, allowing us to now thoughtfully compare these stone-carved messages with other ancient art forms to see the full, brilliant spectrum of how our ancestors chose to speak to the future. Now that we've explored the spiritual and communal roles of these carvings, it's crucial to place them within the broader spectrum of how ancient peoples expressed themselves. To fully appreciate the unique genius of petroglyphs, we need to see how they fit alongside other magnificent art forms from the ancient world, particularly pictographs and hieroglyphs. While all three are powerful windows into the past, they speak in distinctly different dialects of the human experience, each with its own strengths, limitations, and intended audience. Understanding this comparative landscape allows us to see petroglyphs not as a lesser form of communication, but as a uniquely durable and flexible one, perfectly suited to its purpose. The most immediate comparison is with pictographs, which are images painted onto rock surfaces using pigments made from ochre, charcoal, chalk, or other natural materials. Think of the breathtaking, vibrant halls of the Lascaux Cave in France, where majestic bulls and horses seem to gallop across the stone by flickering torchlight. The primary difference here is one of technique and, consequently, durability. Pictographs are additive, the artist applies a substance to the surface. Petroglyphs are reductive, the artist removes material to reveal the image within. This fundamental distinction has profound implications for survival. Pigments can fade, flake, or be washed away by water. They are far more vulnerable to the elements and to the accidental touch of a hand. A petroglyph carved directly into the stone's flesh possesses a stubborn permanence. It can withstand millennia of rain, wind, and sun that would long ago have erased a painted image from the same cliff face. This isn't to say one is superior, it simply means they served different needs. The vivid, often awe-inspiring beauty of a pictograph might have been intended for the controlled, ceremonial environment of a deep cave, a sacred, hidden gallery. A petroglyph, by contrast, was often meant for the open air, a public declaration on a grand, geological scale meant to be seen by all and to endure forever. When we turn to hieroglyphs, like the famous formal script of ancient Egypt, we enter a different realm altogether. Hieroglyphs represent a fascinating and more recent evolutionary step, a fully developed writing system. Where a petroglyph of a bison is a symbol that might represent the actual animal, a concept of abundance or a specific clan, an Egyptian hieroglyph of a bird could function as a phonetic sound, a logogram representing a specific word, or a determinative to clarify meaning. Hieroglyphs are a precise, standardized code with rules of grammar and syntax, used primarily for administrative records, royal propaganda, and religious texts on temple walls and papyrus. They were the tool of scribes and the elite, designed to convey specific, unambiguous information across a vast bureaucracy. Petroglyphs, on the other hand, are often pre-literate. They belong to a world before such formal codification. Their power lies in their openness to interpretation. They are a symbolic language that speaks in metaphors and concepts, accessible to anyone within that culture who understands its visual vocabulary. A single spiral can hold multiple layers of meaning: the sun, water, a journey, eternity, all at once, whereas a hieroglyphic character typically has a much more fixed and narrow definition. This comparison reveals the incredible diversity of ancient communication strategies, each a brilliant adaptation to its cultural and environmental context. A society with a centralized state and a complex priesthood like Egypt developed a precise writing system to manage its empire and record its rituals. A nomadic hunter-gatherer society, constantly on the move across a vast landscape, developed a durable, symbolic language etched into the land itself to mark territories, record stories, and convey spiritual beliefs in a way that didn't require carrying scrolls or tablets. Petroglyphs occupy a unique and vital middle ground in this spectrum. They are more permanent and public than most pictographs, yet more fluid and artistic than the formalized script of hieroglyphs. They are the bridge between pure art and pure writing, a testament to humanity's transition from expressing complex ideas through images alone to encoding speech itself into symbols. By understanding these distinctions, we see that our ancestors weren't just randomly making marks. They were making calculated choices about the best technology available to them to ensure their message, their story, and their identity would resonate through the ages, no matter the form it took. What if the scattered symbols on ancient rock walls could do more than tell local stories? What if they are actually fragments of a global map, charting the most epic journey of all, the movement of humanity itself across the face of the earth? This is the powerful proposition behind studying petroglyphs as records of migration. These enduring marks serve as cultural breadcrumbs, left behind by ancient peoples on the move, offering us tantalizing clues about how our ancestors populated the planet, interacted with each other, and shared ideas across vast and seemingly impassable distances. The evidence for this lies in the astonishing recurrence of specific symbols in places that, according to conventional history, should have no connection. Consider the spiral. This elegant, coiled form appears with remarkable similarity in the megalithic tombs of Neolithic Ireland, carved into the stones of Newgrange, and thousands of miles away on the canyon walls of the American Southwest, created by the ancestral pueblones. How is this possible? Scholars grapple with two compelling theories. The first is the possibility of transoceanic contact, the idea that ancient seafarers, long before Columbus, might have traversed the Atlantic, carrying not just themselves but their cultural ideas and artistic styles from one continent to another. The second theory is perhaps even more fascinating: a parallel cultural development. This suggests that the human mind, when observing the same natural phenomena, the curl of a fern, the whirl of a galaxy, the vortex of water, independently arrives at the same symbolic representation to express universal concepts like life cycles, celestial movement, and spiritual energy. The spiral, in this light, becomes a symbol of both human connection and the shared, innate wiring of the human brain. To move beyond fascinating theories and into the realm of evidence, archaeologists engage in a meticulous practice of mapping. They don't just look at individual sites, they create vast distribution maps charting the occurrence of specific petroglyph styles. A unique style of anthropomorphic figure, a specific technique for pecking, or a particular combination of geometric patterns can act like a cultural fingerprint. By tracing the geographic spread of these fingerprints, researchers can begin to draw probable routes of human movement. A cluster of similar symbols in a coastal area might point to a landing point for maritime migrants. A trail of related motifs leading from a river valley up into a mountain pass could chart an ancient trade or seasonal migration route used for centuries. This isn't about finding a single, smoking gun, but about connecting the dots across a landscape to reveal the faded outlines of ancient pathways. This stone and symbol evidence becomes exponentially more powerful when combined with other fields of study. It acts as a crucial piece of a much larger puzzle. Geneticists can analyze the DNA of modern descendant populations and ancient remains to trace lineage and biological relatedness. Linguists can study the deep roots of language families to see how they diverged and spread. When the story told by the petroglyphs, the cultural story, aligns with the story told by genetics and language, we get a truly three-dimensional picture of human history. For instance, a migration route proposed by the distribution of a certain spearpoint symbol might be confirmed by genetic evidence showing a population split at the same time and place. The petroglyphs provide the tangible, on-the-ground proof that complements the data from the lab, putting a human face on the abstract lines of a genetic map. Ultimately, this decoding of patterns allows us to radically redefine our view of the ancient world. It helps us reconstruct vast, continent-spanning networks of communication and exchange that flourished long before the internet, before roads, even before the written word. These were not static, isolated societies, but dynamic, interconnected ones. Ideas about tool-making, astronomical knowledge, spiritual beliefs, and artistic styles were not invented in a vacuum. They were traded and adapted along with shells, obsidian, and other goods. A symbol carved into a rock in Asia might have a distant cousin in North America, not because of a single long-lost voyage, but because of a slow, relentless, multi-generational process of cultural diffusion across a network of human contact. This reveals an ancient planet that was far more connected than we ever imagined, with petroglyphs serving as the permanent signposts and shared language along that incredible global journey. Beyond their role as records of spiritual belief and human drama, these ancient carvings hold another, equally profound layer of meaning. They are, in effect, frozen frames from a documentary about our planet's ever-changing face. When an artist chose to depict the world around them, they were unknowingly creating a priceless snapshot of their local ecosystem at a precise moment in deep time. This transforms petroglyphs from purely cultural artifacts into crucial scientific documents, offering a ground-level view of environmental history that often complements or even challenges other forms of evidence. Consider the sheer power of a single, unexpected image. In the remote and frigid expanses of Siberia, hunters carved the unmistakable, shaggy forms of mammoths into cliff faces. For a long time, these were seen as depictions of mythical beasts or ancestral memories, but we now understand they are something far more direct, eyewitness accounts. These carvings are a clear and powerful data point, proving that these colossal creatures not only existed but shared the landscape with humans during the last ice age. They provide a tangible link between human culture and a specific, long-vanished megafauna community, helping scientists pinpoint the timeline of human arrival and coexistence with these animals. Similarly, the Sahara Desert, a vast ocean of sand today, was once a rolling savanna crisscrossed by rivers and lakes. The rock art of the Tassili Ennaja Plateau in Algeria is the proof, showing detailed scenes of elephants bathing, giraffes grazing on acacia trees, and hippos submerged in water. These are not fantasies, they are field sketches from a lost world. They provide irrefutable visual evidence of the Green Sahara period, a time when the climate was radically different, allowing paleoclimatologists to correlate these artistic records with core samples and other data to build a more complete picture of ancient weather patterns and ecological shifts. This practice of correlating art with science is where the true detective work begins. Researchers don't just look at the petroglyphs in isolation, they weave them into a much larger tapestry of evidence. By comparing the species depicted in a region's rock art with the fossilized pollen records from ancient lake beds or the isotopic data from ice cores, they can cross-reference the story. If the carvings show a heavy reliance on a particular animal, like the now extinct giant buffalo in North America, and the fossil record shows a decline in that species' remains around the same time, it paints a vivid picture of human impact and adaptation. We can start to see how a community's diet, hunting strategies, and even settlement patterns shifted in response to environmental pressures. A panel that once showed a diverse herd of animals might be followed by later carvings that focus on a single, hardier species, telling a silent story of climate change and resource scarcity. This historical perspective is not just an academic exercise, it holds urgent lessons for our modern world. By understanding how ancient civilizations perceived and responded to dramatic environmental changes, whether it was the desertification of the Sahara or the rising sea levels that once flooded coastal petroglyph sites, we gain a long-term view of human resilience and vulnerability. These carvings show us that climate change is not a new phenomenon, but the human response to it is what defines a society. Did a culture diversify its food sources? Did it migrate? Did its spiritual beliefs adapt to incorporate pleas for rain or thanks for abundance? This deep time data is invaluable for modern conservationists and policymakers, providing real-world case studies of human adaptation that span millennia, far beyond the scope of modern recorded history. Recognizing this dual nature of petroglyphs fundamentally deepens our awe for them. They are not one-dimensional. A carving of an antelope is simultaneously a spiritual totem, a practical hunting lesson, and a precise zoological record. A spiral is both a map of the cosmos and a marker of the solstice sun. This ability to operate on multiple levels, the spiritual, the communal, and the ecological, is a testament to the holistic worldview of our ancestors. They did not separate science from spirituality or art from survival. Everything was interconnected, a single, flowing narrative of existence. This ecological lens reveals them to be not just artists or shamans, but the first naturalists, patiently observing and recording the intricate web of life they depended upon, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inform our understanding of the planet's profound and dynamic history. To truly grasp the power of these ancient carvings, we must move beyond seeing them as artifacts and begin to understand them as the sacred texts of their time, the very heart and soul of a community's identity etched in stone. These carvings are far more than historical records. They are profound expressions of a culture's entire worldview, their creation myths, their pantheon of gods, their deepest values, and their understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. In countless indigenous traditions across the globe, these sites are not considered ancient ruins. They are living, breathing sacred spaces. To stand before them is to stand in the presence of ancestors and deities, to be on hallowed ground that has been a focal point for ritual, prayer, and initiation for thousands of years. A powerful example that brings this spiritual connection to life is the rock art of the San people in southern Africa. Their paintings and carvings, some of which are thousands of years old, are not simple depictions of daily life. Scholars who work closely with San descendants understand these images as vibrant records of shamanic trance experiences. The eland, a large antelope, is a recurring and central figure, revered not just as a key source of food but as a potent spiritual entity. The act of painting the eland was itself a ritual, believed to harness its numinous power. Scenes showing human figures with elongated, flowing bodies, often bleeding from the nose, are interpreted as shamans in a state of transformative ecstasy, journeying into the spirit world to heal sickness, control weather, or communicate with the ancestors. This art was a direct portal to the transcendental, a vital technology for interacting with the unseen forces that govern their existence. Beyond their spiritual function, these carvings served as a durable, communal memory bank, preserving the epic stories that defined a people. Before written languages, the oral tradition was fragile, vulnerable to the passage of time and the upheavals of conflict or migration. Petroglyphs anchored these stories to the land itself. A series of figures marching in a line might not be a simple procession. It could be a literal map of a clan's great migration, marking their journey across generations. A scene depicting a confrontation between two groups could be a commemoration of a pivotal battle or a forged alliance, a historical record meant to instruct future generations on diplomacy and war. A unique, recurring symbol might represent a specific clan's identity, a totem that claimed territory and announced, "Our people belong to this place." In this way, the rock face became a library, a history book, and a public monument all in one. This profound cultural depth is precisely why modern interpretation requires more than just scientific analysis. It demands humility, respect, and collaboration. For many descendant communities, these are not abandoned relics of a dead past. They are active, living heritage. The symbols hold meanings known only to elders, and the sites themselves may still be used for ceremonies. When researchers from outside a culture study these panels without consultation, they risk grave misinterpretation, reducing a sacred symbol to a mere decoration, or imposing an external narrative that erases the true, living meaning. The most meaningful and accurate decoding now happens through partnership, where archaeologists with their advanced technology work hand in hand with tribal historians and knowledge keepers who hold the oral traditions and spiritual context. This collaborative approach does more than just lead to better science. It is an act of cultural respect, ensuring that the stories these stones tell are the true stories, honoring the voices of the people whose ancestors first put tool to rock. This respectful synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern methodology is revolutionizing our ability to listen to the whispers of the past. Imagine a time before nations, before written laws, even before towns. What held a community together? What gave a scattered group of people a shared sense of who they were? For countless ancient societies, the answer is etched in stone. Petroglyphs were far more than individual artistic expressions. They were the foundational pillars of community and identity, a powerful social glue that bonded people across generations. In a world without mass media or the written word, these communal canvases served as a public library, a town square, and a sacred monument all rolled into one, reinforcing the very idea of us. This sense of shared identity was forged through the depiction of common stories. A single panel showing a legendary hunt or a great migration wasn't just a record. It was a mythic history that every member of the community could point to and say, "This is our story. This is where we came from." By collectively visiting these sites, perhaps during seasonal gatherings or initiation ceremonies, people would reaffirm their connection to this narrative and to each other. It was a physical place where the abstract concept of community became tangible. Think of it like a modern-day national monument or a war memorial, a place where people gather to remember, to honor, and to feel a part of something larger than themselves. The act of gathering there, of touching the same stones their ancestors touched, created an unbroken chain of belonging, a continuity that stretched from the deep past into the living present. This function extended into the very practical matters of daily life and survival. In a landscape without surveyors, stakes, or fence posts, petroglyphs could act as silent, permanent markers of territory and agreement. A specific symbol, a particular animal form, or a unique geometric pattern repeated along a river valley or a mountain pass might signal to others, "This land is under the stewardship of our clan." This wasn't necessarily an aggressive no trespassing sign, but more a declaration of responsibility and belonging. It managed resources and prevented conflict by clearly denoting who had rights to hunt, gather, or fish in an area. Similarly, a panel depicting two different groups interacting peacefully could commemorate an important alliance, a marriage between families, or a trade agreement. These carvings made abstract social contracts visible and durable, serving as a constant reminder of communal rights and responsibilities that everyone was expected to uphold. The proof of this common cultural language is in the repetition. When you see the same spiral motif, the same style of human figure, or the same depiction of a bison appearing on rock faces across a wide geographic region, you are seeing the footprint of a shared identity. This visual consistency means that someone from one village could travel to another 100 miles away and still recognize the symbols, understanding that they were among people who shared their core beliefs and values. This created a network of interpersonal connection that strengthened social bonds over vast distances, fostering trade, intermarriage, and mutual aid. It was a system that allowed for both local individuality and a broader regional cohesion, enabling societies to navigate the challenges of an unpredictable world by standing together. Ultimately, studying this social dimension of petroglyphs reveals something timeless about the human condition. It shows us that our ancient ancestors grappled with the same fundamental needs we do today: the need to belong, to have a shared history, and to work together for the common good. In our modern, digital age, where community is often fostered through screens and social networks, these ancient stone messages remind us that the impulse for shared expression is a deep and enduring part of who we are. They challenge us to consider what our own modern petroglyphs are. What are the shared stories and symbols that bind our communities together now? And how will we choose to leave our mark for the generations that follow? The quest to understand these ancient messages is on the cusp of a breathtaking transformation, propelled by a new generation of tools that feel almost like science fiction. Imagine an artificial intelligence program trained on thousands of images of petroglyphs from across the globe, beginning to detect subtle patterns and connections that would take a human researcher a lifetime to spot. This isn't about replacing human intuition, it's about augmenting it. An eye could analyze the precise curvature of a spiral across continents, comparing it to local celestial cycles or hydrological data, suggesting previously unimaginable links between symbol and environment. It could sift through vast digital archives to find the distant cousins of a specific animal depiction, potentially tracing the faint outlines of cultural exchange routes that have been invisible to us until now. This computational power allows us to move beyond isolated case studies and see the bigger picture, to understand petroglyphs as a global phenomenon with underlying rules and structures we are only beginning to comprehend. Alongside this data-driven revolution is an experiential one powered by virtual and augmented reality. For centuries, accessing these sacred sites has required difficult travel, often to remote and fragile environments. Now, through the magic of high-resolution 3D scanning and VR technology, we can bring these sites to anyone, anywhere in the world. A student in a classroom, an elder in a community center, or an enthusiast at home can don a headset and suddenly be transported to a sun-drenched canyon wall in New Mexico or a misty fjord in Norway. They can not just see the carvings but experience their scale, their relationship to the landscape, and the sheer awe of standing before them. This democratizes access in an unprecedented way, breaking down barriers of geography, physical ability, and economics. It also serves as a powerful preservation tool, creating perfect digital twins of sites that are under constant threat from erosion and human impact, ensuring that even if the original stone succumbs to time, its legacy will endure in perfect detail for all future generations. Perhaps the most profound shift, however, is not technological but philosophical. The field of archaeology is undergoing a long overdue reckoning, moving away from a model where outside experts arrive to study a culture and toward a collaborative framework that centers and honors indigenous voices. This decolonizing approach recognizes that the most vital key to understanding these symbols does not lie in a laboratory, but in the living oral traditions, languages, and ceremonial practices of the descendant communities. The goal is no longer to simply extract information, but to build respectful partnerships. This means that research projects are co-designed with tribal councils, that indigenous scholars and knowledge keepers lead the interpretation, and that the findings are returned to the community to support cultural revitalization efforts. This isn't just more ethical, it leads to dramatically more accurate and nuanced understandings. A complex pattern that an outside archaeologist might label as abstract art could be revealed by a community elder as a detailed map of ancestral hunting grounds or a representation of a specific constellation's movement in a creation story. This fusion of cutting-edge science with ancient, enduring wisdom is where the most exciting discoveries are now being made. Looking even further ahead, future research may venture into the very wiring of the human brain itself, exploring the emerging field of neuroarchaeology. Scientists are beginning to ask fascinating questions about the universal neurological underpinnings of symbolic expression. Why do certain shapes, spirals, zigzags, concentric circles appear so consistently across cultures and millennia? One compelling theory suggests these forms, known as entoptic phenomena, are hardwired into our visual cortex and are commonly seen during altered states of consciousness induced by rhythmic chanting, sensory deprivation, or ritualistic practices. A shaman in a trance state, seeking to depict their journey to the spirit world, might naturally give form to these internal visions. This doesn't reduce the meaning of the symbols, but instead roots them in a shared human biological experience, suggesting that our ancestors were not just recording the outside world, but also mapping the intricate landscapes of their own minds. This exploration promises to bridge the gap between the material and the spiritual, offering a scientific lens through which to understand humanity's timeless urge to create meaning through symbol. The future of petroglyph research, therefore, is a beautiful and powerful synthesis. It is a future where artificial intelligence and virtual reality work hand in hand with oral histories and ceremonial knowledge. It is a path where a protein residue analysis from a stone tool can sit alongside an elder's story about a hunting ritual, each validating and enriching the other. This integrated approach holds the exciting potential to finally hear the full, rich, multi-layered story these stones have been trying to tell us. We are moving beyond simply asking what a petroglyph is, and beginning to understand what it did, how it functioned in the mind of the carver, the life of the community, and the spirit of the culture that created it. This forward momentum, blending the empirical with the empathic, ensures that the conversation with our ancestors is just beginning, and that their whispers across the millennia are about to become a much clearer, more resonant dialogue. And so, as our exploration of these silent stone libraries comes to a close, we are left not with a final answer, but with a far greater gift, a profound sense of connection. This journey has revealed that these marks are anything but primitive scratches. They are the elegant, intentional language of our collective human family, a bridge built of rock and symbol that spans the chasm of millennia. We have seen how a single spiral can simultaneously chart the path of the sun and the journey of the soul, how the image of a mighty bison can be both a prayer for sustenance and a record of ecological change, and how a complex geometric grid can function as a map, a calendar, and a spiritual diagram all at once. Each symbol, each scene, is a multi-layered testament to the incredible ingenuity, adaptability, and spiritual depth of those who came before us. The true power of this decoding process lies in the beautiful fusion of old and new, the respectful marriage of cutting-edge technology with timeless traditional knowledge. It is through this collaboration that we truly learn to listen. 3D scanners and spectral imaging allow us to see the faintest grooves worn smooth by centuries of wind, while the living voices of descendant communities teach us how to hear the stories those grooves contain. This isn't just about preserving the past, it's about enriching our present and informing our future. By understanding how ancient cultures perceived their world, recorded their history, and navigated immense challenges like climate change, we gain not just knowledge but wisdom. We are reminded of our own place in the long, unbroken story of humanity, and of the enduring need to find meaning, to build community, and to leave a mark that says we were here. This is the ultimate invitation these ancient walls extend to us. Let them inspire you to become a decoder in your own right, to look with fresh eyes at the world around you. Notice the patterns in the bark of a tree, the swirl of cream in your coffee, or the modern graffiti on a city street. See them not as random acts, but as part of the same human impulse to communicate, to find order, and to create beauty. Every surface, in its own way, has a story waiting to be read. Thank you for embarking on this journey to decode the language of walls with us. If these unwritten secrets of the ancients have sparked your curiosity, feel free to like this video, subscribe for more explorations into history's deepest mysteries, and share your own thoughts and discoveries in the comments below. The conversation with the past is always continuing.